Good afternoon and welcome to today's live, hosted and sponsored by Olive International. My name is Zawadi Thanji and I will be your host today. Karibuni sana. Olive International is a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2012 and its focus is to promote positive youth development. So some of the Olive programs include um, youth leadership and peer mentoring training, counseling services, community-based outreach, and advocacy programs.
So welcome everyone. My name is Mrs. Simiyu, but popularly known as Auntie Lucy. I think that should be a brand, right?
Sure, to
That
Lucy.
should be a brand. Um, so about myself, I think you said everything. Psychologist by profession, founder of Olive International. Really excited to be here. Um, I love working with young people. I'm passionate about young people. In addition to young people, I also work with children and adolescents. And the purpose for that is just to help young people discover who they are, their potential, and get them to live out their life purpose. I think that's enough for now.
Sure. Thank you, Auntie Lucy. The brand, Auntie Lucy. Mr. Mark?
Yes. Like she said, I love to work with young people as well. I've developed a passion for young people several years ago because I realized that the potential and the passion of youth is not being channeled aright. So it's one of my core passions to help young people discover first their identity and then their purpose in life, and then help them build character that can sustain what we believe they are supposed to do with one life. So, like she said, I lead Activate, which is an international organization that mobilizes young people for global mission. So, in a nutshell, yes, I'm married, I have 3 children, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Mark. Well, it seems that you two are the perfect panelists for today's session because you're passionate about young people, and that is exactly why we are here today. Our live is focused on building resilience, and this topic came about through one of our peer mentoring trainings. They had, that particular cohort had a webinar on resilience, and this has been a very trying year, 2020, and so we just wanted to discuss more about how young people can bounce back from challenges that come their way. So tell me, Auntie Lucy, what is your definition of resilience?
Can I use an analogy?
Sure.
What's your favorite cake?
Vanilla.
Vanilla. Tell me some of the ingredients.
Eggs, flour, milk, water, vanilla essence, sugar, self-rising flour.
All right. So imagine you walked into my kitchen and all those ingredients are on the tabletop. And then I tell you, Zawadi, have some cake. Is that cake?
No, it is not.
What would be the process? How would it become cake? How would those ingredients become cake?
Mixing them together, preheating the oven to the temperature that's best for it, putting them in the pan, greasing the pan first, putting it in the oven and waiting for it to bake. Yes.
And then after that,
Eat and enjoy.
yes, thank you. So for me, resilience is like the process of baking a cake. The heat, the mixing fast, beat it up, beat up the eggs, greasing the pan. There's some life situations where you're sliding through life and you're like, help, help, help. And then you're put in this oven and it's really, really hot.
Yes.
But you know what? The end product, that's what we're waiting for, the vanilla cake. Yeah. And so resilience is a quality that every human being, I believe, has to go through the heat, the fire, the beating up, and then come out stronger and more beautiful.
That is an amazing analogy. I've never thought of resilience like that, but that is so good. Thank you, Auntie Lucy. Mr. Mark, what's your definition of resilience?
Maybe not definition, but I'll describe what I see resilience to be. It's bouncing back when you've been knocked down. It's when you've taken the beating, the ability to stand back up and continue to do what you believe is the right path to keep pursuing. So resilience is that innate quality that is in every human being, but needs to be cultivated and developed in order to surmount the challenges of life and become everything you're supposed to be.
Absolutely. I think this year, 2020, if there's anything that people did more, it's baking. There was a lot of baking this year, 2020, and a lot of bouncing back from challenges. And those are challenges that none of us were prepared for, but yet we found ourselves in. So, is there a difference, in your opinion, of resilience or similarity of resilience and perseverance?
I think for me, perseverance is an aspect of resilience. Because for you to develop the quality of resilience, then you must learn how to persevere, to stick it in until you get out onto the other side.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
I think that perseverance, but you can use perseverance in a whole lot of circumstances where you are not necessarily knocked down. Perseverance is the journey. Resilience is what you do when the journey doesn't seem to go the way you want it to be. Yeah, so you are knocked down. Resilience means you pick back up. Perseverance, however, is that ongoing, non-stop quality or element that you need to have in order to, sail through the whole long haul. But resilience requires an aspect of getting back up when things are just flat out in the opposite direction.
Absolutely. I think the reason I asked why or what's the difference or similarities of perseverance and resilience is because I think as young people, we hear the word persevere or tenacity to push through and keep going. But what happens when we literally have failed? We literally are on the floor, on the ground with nothing else to do. And that's resilience, and that's the purpose of today's life. I'd like to ask you all, from your experience, to maybe talk about a time when you failed, a time where you were completely knocked out, and what lessons and how you got through and how you got up from that. Either of you could go first.
Let's start with Mr. Mark.
Okay. I've had many experiences. I was telling somebody, I said, if I was going to recount the failures I've had in life, I mean, I can write a book about how to fail in life because I've had several. Let me just give 2 or 3 very quick examples or experiences. One of it had to do actually with a failed relationship. The person I was absolutely convinced I was supposed to get married to. We were in courtship for 3 years. So it's like, this was not a flash in the pan. This was not somebody you met just the other day. So you are taking time to know each other. You'd grown, through different circumstances. And then the whole relationship literally failed, a couple of months to the wedding. Yeah. And I mean, that was a major setback to life in itself. And that kind of affected the way I viewed life, relationship, marriage, and all that. Almost gave up really on the whole idea of ever getting married. But I bounced back a couple of years later, picked up the pieces, and tried to make sense of that whole experience, which was very difficult to understand at the time. But that was failure, because it was very embarrassing to not be able to hold a simple relationship together that you had nurtured for 3 years. Our most recent experience was last year. As a ministry team, we had planned a major effort to work with young people through 2020. And we had collaborated with a bigger organization that had more space, more reach, more resources. And they were very enthusiastic with our vision and our idea. And so they invited us on to, we approached them and they were very excited. So we're to work together through this whole thing of how to engage hundreds of young people in the year 2020. What we didn't know, however, was that there was a lot of internal politics in that other organization. We didn't do our due diligence. Long story short, it was a failure. Nothing picked up. The date for launch came. They absolutely, I mean, it was a whole mess. We basically had to down all tools. This was before COVID. Early in the year, as early as January, we were to launch by January 27th. But everything went south. Now, I took responsibility as team lead because I was meant to have done some background checks. We had expended a lot of resources, time, energy, prayer, money, but nothing came of it. We took this, we had to go back into the drawing table in the second half of this year to redesign that whole concept and deciding now to go alone. And it's opened up some new doors for us, which we're looking forward to launching in 2021. But that was failure.
Very much. I appreciate that you gave a personal example and a more professional example of failure, and both examples were quite public. People knew you were getting married. People they knew the date. People knew you had a project. People knew the launch date, and I can only imagine how that must have felt with it being so public and now everyone knowing that it wasn't going to happen anymore. And I wanted to ask, how did you deal with the criticism and the negative feedback?
Oh, wow. That was tough, especially with the personal one.
Yes.
Because everybody had expectations. I mean, family on both sides, friends, people from all over. People were looking forward to. How did I deal with it? First of all, I think I was... a lot of things happened in that season that I couldn't define. It was almost like being part of a movie. You were watching a movie being played out right before you, but you were the lead actor. But
you're watching it also.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wow. So it was very difficult. It was a very difficult season. Let me say this because I dare to be vulnerable. I've never ever contemplated suicide except that season. This was almost 20 years ago. The most difficult experience of my life. So it was a time when I actually contemplated. It was easier for me to end this, yes, not live than to exactly, and to wake up the following morning and have to face this. But I think I'm a Christian, so I'll speak from the perspective of how I dealt with this with the grace of God. I believe that it was the grace of God that kept me back from taking my life. It was the grace of God that helped me to see the next day and the next day and the next day. My breakthrough came at the end of that year when I took some time alone, because I wanted to understand what was happening. I couldn't make sense of much of what I was passing through, and it was in a silent moment, all alone by myself in a guest house where I had rented to stay for like 3 days, that I heard God speak to me. His affirming love, acceptance. Biggest lesson out of that whole experience was the understanding of the mercy of God and the fact that God is not just the God of a second chance, He's the God of multiple chances. Yeah.
And that His voice and His opinion only matters.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I know, right? I'm holding it back.
There's no tissue.
Yes. Tell me about a time when you failed and how you bounced back and what lessons learned from that experience.
Let me not refer to it as failure, but a time of loss. The first incident will be a time of loss. And I know I've shared this with quite a few people. When my dad fell ill, growing up, my dad and I had a great relationship. I loved him. And then just seeing a man who had never been sick begin to deteriorate. He had cancer of the colon, and, hospital visits, praying, hoping, tests and all this. And you're thinking, no, he can't. I mean, I'm the firstborn. You can't just leave, And then finally on 25th April 2012, he passed away. And what a great sense of loss. I just remember saying in my heart, in my spirit, Papa, you've left me. Where do you start? Where, how, And I think for me, that would have been a time to really sink low, because it was such a loss. And I looked at my mom, I looked at my siblings, and especially my mom, and I just thought, wow, will she pull through? Because we had a dad who took care of us, took care of her, very solid, He was a father. He was present.
Like the glue in the
yes. And so I remember between April and December of that year, it was sort of like I was in a daze and just wondering, so what becomes of us? You know, how do I live my life without my dad? But in December of that year, I was reading a book. It's called Wild at Heart. It's actually a book written for men. Don't ask me how I ended up reading that book. And something in there just, captivated me about unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it cannot bear fruit. And I realized in the death of my father, with my dad's death, I had an opportunity to rise up and live out the vision and the dream that I had. Now, interestingly, and this ties in with the topic resilience, that at the same time, November, December, when I'm going through this, just processing, that's the same time I felt the need just to step out of formal employment and start Olive International. Wow. Now, that needed resilience. Wow. Yeah. But I'm really grateful. I didn't have issues with the NGO coordination board, but just going back and forth, I don't have a source of income. Here are young people looking up to me and thinking, yeah, Olive, yes, we are meeting every Sunday. We have meetings and all that, But I guess perseverance, like you said, it's a journey. But then there's that bit of come out of this shell of mourning and focus on the bigger vision. So for me, in a way, Olive is a gift that God gave me to comfort me. Yeah.
During your time of mourning.
Yes.
As the firstborn, did you feel pressure from outside to be strong, to rise up, to stand up for your family, to continue his legacy, to push through and move forward, despite the fact that you are still dealing with a very personal loss and grieving, which takes a lot of time?
You'd be surprised. No, I didn't feel the pressure. I think we'd been prepared. When someone has got a terminal illness, I think you sort of prepare yourself. And we used to talk, there, two of my siblings, we used to talk quite a bit. Though I remember I told one of my brothers, Papa has gone, we need to live out his legacy. Then he just told me, Lucy, it's not about his legacy. Let it be about you. Let it be about how you want to live your life. He's given us what he could, And so that eased off the pressure. But the general family, there wasn't that pressure.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I appreciate both of your examples from a personal, public, private experiences of failure and loss, and how you have bounced back and what you have gained from that. I guess my next question would be, do you think, in your opinion, that resilience is something inborn or something that we cultivate as we grow?
I think it's both, really. There's an element of, there's a strength that every human being comes into this world with to withstand difficulty, to be able to, it doesn't matter what creed, what religion, what gender, what, part of the world, but it's also something that has to be cultivated. Everything that we come into this world with is in seed form. If you do nothing with it, it basically doesn't live out its full potential. It dies, yeah. So I believe it's both inborn, but the larger part of it has to be cultivated. It has to be, I mean, you can accept defeat and just lie down and take it and go into a pity party, and that's just it. But you could also pick up the pieces and choose to forage on. So it's cultivated as well. And I think that's the larger part where people need to put effort in. Having received something in seed form, what you do with it now depends on you. So
what you're saying is that when we are born, there is an inner toughness that we are naturally, organically created to have, but over time, it is shaped and molded into a way that can better our lives. Okay, thank you. To Lucy?
And just to build on that, think about a little baby. They fight.
yeah.
By the way,
Babies fight.
they have instinctual instincts,
Yes.
actually, yes.
Even when you've seen like some women giving birth and then they throw away the baby, but the baby is found later, and this baby has cried and cried and cried, and we come and we rescue the baby. There's that innate ability. They want to survive. Yeah. So we are born with resilience, each one of us, I believe. And then now, what he's talked about, cultivating it, the socialization process. Now, here is where the challenge comes in, whether it will be cultivated or it will be quenched, especially depending on the family setting that you're growing up in. Because yes, we come into the world like that, but then if your family is the kind of family, perhaps, and this is not for everyone, because if you're coming from a dysfunctional family, then perhaps your resilience, the ability to grow that resilience may be negatively affected. Though on the other hand, there are kids who've grown up in abusive homes and they come out fighting.
Sure.
Yeah. So the socialization process, I believe, helps to nurture that. Though it depends again what kind of family setting. And then when kids go to school, you have your peers, whom are you hanging out with? So if you're hanging out with people who don't value you, who don't encourage you to fight, encourage you, hey, you failed in math, so what? Rise up again, or teachers who speak down at you, again, personality issues come in. Someone might just easily give up and say, you know what, it really doesn't matter. But I could say innate and cultivated. It's both.
Let me throw in a story here that might help illustrate this. It's a true story, by the way. I read it some years ago. Can't even remember the title of the book, more than 20 years ago. Story was told of a man in a small town in the US. So everybody knew everybody, but he was a brawler. He was just a public menace. He was a nuisance to society. He would go get drunk, fight in the bar, come back with bruises, beat up his wife. So he had these two sons, who watched him literally drink his life away. They watched him abuse their mother. He would beat them. He was just a violent alcoholic, very dysfunctional. But as they grew, and of course he ended up in jail, as they grew, one became exactly like his father. He was a fighter. He was he would beat people. He would just, and then the other turned out to be a very responsible person. He went to school, got a degree, went for a second degree, became a community leader, became an elder in his church, raised a very decent family, same family. So this news reporter decided to do some investigation about their backgrounds, because he found out that these two people, one was a criminal behind bars, the other was a responsible and loved leader in the community, and wanted to know how come. How did they live through the same experience but turned out differently? And he interviewed them separately. So he started with the guy who was behind bars, and he asked him, with the kind of father you had, how come you ended up like that? Actually, no, the question he asked him is like, we've done a lot of investigation about your background and your history and your family setting, and we knew you came from a dysfunctional home. How did you end up like this? And the guy told him, with the kind of father I had, what do you expect? So he went and interviewed his brother, who was a totally different person.
Sure.
And he asked him the same question. How did you end up like this? He says, with the kind of father I had, what do you expect?
Wow.
Same answer, same environment, but they both different outcomes because they made a decision. One decided, I'll never be like this. The other one just simply towed the line and yes, absolutely. So
wow. I think a lot of people, when they even hear that story or they hear you guys' experience, that's the first thing they think of. Well, I was raised in a dysfunctional family. I was raised with parents who didn't cultivate me to persevere, to be resilient. My teachers never encouraged me to grow and to see failure as a way to learn. But that story really does show that you can be raised in the exact same house, even a functional home, and there are siblings who turn out to be highly dysfunctional, and there are other siblings who turn out to be functional and to rise above the circumstances. And so I appreciate that story because it really does give light to, it's not really about the boat that we're in, but rather how we turn the sails, which will direct where we're going. So I appreciate that. That reminds me, those of you who are watching, please feel free to comment, to ask questions, because we will have a time for question and answers later. So when I'm thinking about your experience, particularly your personal experience with your engagement 20 years ago, there was no social media.
Nope.
And I think a lot of young people, one of the things that we hate most about failing is how public it is.
Yeah.
Because now we're in an area of social media, we post everything, we want likes and subscribers and whatnot. So what do you think is hindering our generation? And maybe compared to you all, which we're in the same generation, I'm sure. But compared to when you were growing up, pre-social media, pre this public proclamation of what we're doing and how our lives are going, what do you think is hindering young people from cultivating a spirit of resilience?
You know something, Zawadi? Generations are not different. I find it very interesting when people say, oh, today, this and this. There was peer pressure when you're growing up, right? There was lots of things. You could choose to go partying. His engagement failed and the whole village knew.
Sure.
So, youth issues or youth development issues maybe just heightened a little bit in this generation we are living in, but every generation has got its own drama and issues, yeah? And so what makes it, now coming to your question, what makes it critical for this generation? I think we lie to ourselves when we're on social media and get those likes, or you're following Miss Z here. I think that's how what is your IG page, Miss Z? Okay.
Zawadi, yes.
Zawadi?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'm right.
Yes.
So you're following her, and this is just an illustration. And she posts this happy ever after smile and looks and makeup and what, and maybe you haven't slept the whole night. You didn't have food to eat. You don't have a job. You're not posting who you really are. Yeah. And so when we fail, we immediately translate it to, oh my God, I'm not like so-and-so. I don't measure up. But whom are you measuring up against?
By the way, yeah.
Who is this person?
That you're comparing yourself to.
Who is this stranger in Australia, in New Zealand, even in Eldoret that you're following? You have no idea about their struggles, yeah? And even when we have people who tell their success stories, most people, unfortunately, don't tell you the struggles.
Sure.
You know those 10 steps to get rich? They just tell you the steps and how they got there and gloss over the struggles. And so we have false role models, yeah? And we peg our lives on them. And then when real life happens to us, we feel like, oh my God, I'm a failure, I'm a failure. But was that your role model? Were they showing you the truth?
Or is that failure any different from what that person who you see on Instagram or social media, is that failure any different from what anyone else is going through? It's just that now we prefer to highlight the good parts of our lives without actually even talking about the bad parts that make connections with other people who also go through those bad things in their life as well. So what you're saying is there's a level of not realness, of fakeness, honestly.
Yeah.
And then we also people don't have genuine friendships. Yes. There isn't a genuine sense of community.
Sure.
So we hang out, but I'm hanging out with you because of what I can get from you, or to get popular, you know, because Jennifer has got more followers. If I become her friend and we take pictures together and tag her in my pictures, then I'll get more followers. That is fake.
Sure.
Because when the rubber meets the road, will this Jennifer stand with me during my difficult times?
So it's not when things are going well that we know who our friends are, but rather when we fail, that's when we really can know who stands for us and who's not going to judge us and who's going to support us, even in our loss and our failure. Thank you. What about you? What do you think are some of the things that are stopping young people or hindering or barriers to young people cultivating resilience?
Yeah, I think I'll mention two or three. I agree with her. Let me build up on one of the ones she's mentioned. We wear a lot of masks these days.
Yes.
We don't seem to be very, very confident about who we are. I talked earlier about the issue of identity and purpose. A lot of young people have not discovered who they really are.
Sure.
So they are trying to be somebody else, you know. So when life hits them, they have a lot of questions and they wonder why. The second thing I'd like to say about that is that a lot of young people have a wrong sense of self-entitlement. They want everything to go their way.
Sure.
And so they you know, why did this happen to me? Why didn't this go this way? And then a lot of false expectations from life. So we're not real.
Sure.
And so when things don't go the way we expect them to go, people they
crumble.
They crumble. That's the word. You know, they are not able to pick up themselves and say, look, yes, this has happened, but I'm not giving up. You know, so I think everything boils down to, I like to call it for me, I call it the IPCE principle, IPCE. Those four things are critical in defining the kind of life, the quality of life that somebody lives. I for identity, P for purpose, C for character, and then E for eternity. And for me, those four, I call them the four pillars of a successful life: identity, purpose, character, and eternity.
Wow. So we've been invited to a birthday party. We go to the house. We're so excited for cake. We go to the house and we see all the ingredients for cake on the counter. And we're like, this is a disaster. Where's the cake? Now what do we do? I was told there'll be cake. I was told there's a birthday party and I don't see any cake. And so that's something that we haven't been trained or we haven't been encouraged to now look at these ingredients and say, okay, what do I do now? Because there needs to be cake. There are people coming. And so how can I make this cake? A lot of people are joking, young people are joking on social media about how we're tiptoeing to 2021. And a lot of people look back at 2020 in January and they laugh at the goals they had and the things they wanted to accomplish. And so now we're just like, unless I see the trailer for 2021, I'm not subscribing, I'm not gonna go see the movie. And so what would you say or advice are some skills, some qualities that we can use even moving forward into a new year, just particularly after this year where we had started off strong, we started off having things that we wanted to do, and then challenges happened and everything that we once thought was normal or was what we thought was predictable changed. What would you say are some advice to give young people as we even embark on a new year and how we can be more resilient even from the experiences of this year?
You know something? He mentioned identity. If you know who you are, you shouldn't tiptoe into 2021. Never. And you shouldn't even tiptoe about life. So one, sit with yourself. Today is what, day 30th? So we have only one day.
Sure.
Tomorrow, take time, sit with, just alone and ask yourself, who am I? Who am I? Even as I'm getting into 2021. And begin to nip off the fakeness. Nip it off. Cut off the fake friends. Yeah? Cut off the fake relatives. Fake. The fake hair. Yeah? Cut it off, and just be real. Yeah? So the question, who am I? Then number 2, what is your purpose? What is the reason for your living? We were talking with Mark earlier on, and we said both for Activate and Olive International, this year has been one of the most fruitful years because of what has happened. Tragedy didn't steal away. Instead, it added so much to us. And so we were just saying how we've conducted programs that would never have dreamt of doing them. We've had interactions with people across the globe. Yeah, very, very productive. And that's because it's all about purpose. Yeah, we understand this is our purpose and this is the reason we are alive. And so we'll keep doing it no matter what. Then lastly, the third point, let me not finish points for him. We must be passionate about why we are alive.
Sure.
you can't live life.
Sure.
There must be life. Yeah? There must be great passion. There must be a zeal about life. So what are you living for? Even if you're is it mkokoteni pusher? I don't know mkokoteni in English, whatever word it is, the cart pusher.
Yeah.
Be passionate about it. If that's what you have gotten to do, be passionate about it. If you've been hired and you're not getting the salary you wanted, you have a job. Be passionate about it.
Sure.
Because we only live once.
Sure.
Yeah? You don't want to die and get to the other life and you're told, oh, you were so dull, you were so boring. We shouldn't be.
No risks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
One thing I'd like to add to that, build your life on the unchanging. A lot of people have built their lives on things that are shifting, things that can easily, trends are always changing, fashions are always changing. People have built their lives on the transient rather than on the enduring. Most people haven't found foundations that can't change, things that time cannot erode. So one piece of advice as you step into 2021, find foundations, things that can't change, things that principles that are enduring, that you can build your life on, rather than, watching movies and spending all your time on social media to find out what's trending. Who cares what's trending? A few weeks, months from now, things that seem like it's the top of the world, you wouldn't want to have anything to do with it.
Absolutely.
Because times have changed. Time changes everything. Nothing lasts forever. Find what lasts. Find what's enduring. Build your life on it. And no matter what changes in this world, your life will continue to have that central, that core that remains fixed. Yeah.
Wow. Auntie Lucy, Mark, your insights are incredible. Kindly allow us to take a short break. We will be right back. Continue to send in your comments, questions about our topic of resilience, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you. Welcome back to Olive International's Live on Resilience. Thank you for joining us. So I'm here with Mr. Mark Kolo and Miss Lucy Simiyu, hashtag Auntie Lucy. And I wanted to go back to you, Mark, about your very intimate personal example of a broken engagement, a wedding date was set and everyone knew about it, and then that relationship ended. 20 years ago, there was no social media, so it wasn't as public as it is today, but still community members and whatnot knew about it. I can imagine nowadays, our generation, we post everything. And when things do not go our way and when things fail and crumble, not only are we embarrassed that it failed, we're also embarrassed that everyone knows about it. So tell me, what do you think is hindering young people from being resilient, especially in today's social media age?
I think partly it's because we've adopted an image of something or someone we are not. It's been all through the ages. Everybody wants to put their best foot forward. You want to be seen as this person who's got it all together. But I think it's been heightened in the last, 10, 15 years with the advent of social media, access to, seeing many people's private lives, which isn't really that private because they only make you see what they want you to see. They really aren't real. Much of what is out there isn't really who they really are. So a lot of young people have developed their sense of self-worth and their image from what they see on social media. So we're not real. That sense of authenticity has been eroded for the most part. When I was going through my crisis, virtually everybody around me knew, and they knew what was the cause of it, and some people's perception of me changed. That affected me, but it didn't stop me from, I basically told those who were nearest and dearest to me, this is who I am, this is what has happened, deal with it. My parents were extremely supportive, extremely. I think it would have been much more difficult if I didn't have their support. But there were people also who who just outrightly spread stories about me. You are walking down the street and you feel like the whole city is looking at you because they know this is the heartbreaker, in quotes, it was bad. But I think that the difference between then and now is the sense of authentic identity that many people put out there has been eroded. We are deriving our sense of identity now from who we think we are through the lenses of other people, because of course with social media you can see everybody puts their best picture on Instagram, says what they want you to know about them on Facebook. But that may not really be who they are. So many people have derived their identity from social media rather than who they really, really are. And I think that's a major cause for the weakened sense of resilience among young people.
I like what you said, that you knew who you were. You knew who you are, and you knew why things ended that way between you and that young lady. And so despite what the rumors or what people were saying about you, it did not stop who you were. Yeah. It was challenging, it was hurtful, it was embarrassing, but it didn't stop who you were. I can only imagine when things have failed and I didn't know who I was to begin with. And I've posted it for everyone to see, and who I was dictated on that particular thing happening well. That job, that relationship, this goal that I told everyone I wanted to achieve by the end of 2020. And so because of who I was rooted in that, if it failed, I no longer am anyone. Auntie Lucy.
Yeah, fakeness. And it doesn't only affect young people. Even the elderly, the mature men and women posting stuff that is not real, and just so they can gain acceptance. But maybe for today's generation, and as you can see, even him, when he was younger, he went through a heartbreak. These things do happen.
Sure.
Yeah. I think it becomes more difficult for young people in today's world with the social media, because you portray yourself as this person, and in real life you're not that person. Yeah, you want to look like you have the money, you have the friends, you have the connections, and in real life it isn't there. You want to look like you're this cheerful, always happy-go-lucky boy or girl. In real life it's not there. Yeah, you want to look, sometimes I sit and go through people's profiles, what school did you go to, and you've picked these big schools. Something, it just puts you in a situation when life really happens, you don't know how to get out of it. Sure. So it's easier to crumble. But imagine if you were just real from the word go, and say, this is who I am. Yeah. This is who I am with short hair. I'm not wearing a wig. I'm not wearing fake eyelashes. I'm not wearing, layers and layers of whatnot. There was a story. I digress a bit. There's a guy who said you divorced his newly wedded wife because he was like, what? Are you the same one? That's not the one I married yesterday, So I think we've created a certain image around ourselves that is not real, and when real life happens, then just crumble. Now, aside from and I think social media really defines who we are nowadays, even in terms of what we want to study, the careers we want to get into. So some of us are not, and I'm saying this truthfully, we are not academically oriented or gifted. Yeah. But because if I became an architecture or, these careers that have got tags or titles before them, and I put it on my social media page and whatnot, then that means there's a certain level of esteem I receive from society. You're lying to yourself. You're killing yourself because you're going through a career path that when things become difficult in the career, what will you do? You give up. Yeah. And I think bottom line, it's just the lack of authenticity, as Mark said.
Many people aren't living from their core. They haven't discovered who they really are. Identity is I think it's the scarcest concept that many people have discovered. So when you try to live your life through other people's lenses, such a life, you can't build anything on it. So I was talking about identity, purpose, character, and eternity as the four pillars of building a great life. If you weave your life around who you are intrinsically, why you were created, and then what you are to build into your life along this journey, and then ultimately where you are going, your destiny. I think that few things will be able to knock you down and keep you down. Building around these four things, knowing who you are, why you are here, what you are to build into your life along the journey, because of the vision of who you want to become, and I'm talking authentically who you want to become, not what other people want you to become, and then ultimately where you are going. You will be a very resilient person. You will fight through every obstacle and keep rising above the challenges and hindrances.
And you've just mentioned character, and Olive International is about positive youth development. And I think the aspect of character is lacking, So who is glorified on social media? People who lack character.
Yes.
Whom does the media go for in terms of news? Men and women who lack character.
Oh, yes.
And so we never get to see the people who've stuck it in, someone who's never taken a bribe, We don't celebrate those people.
Yeah.
And so young people are growing up thinking, oh, you know what, to make it in life, I must give a bribe, I must sleep around, I must mention, even us when we were growing up at university, people would have sex with lecturers or what, but it's still a choice. That's why I'd said, every generation, there are issues, there's drama, yeah?
Sure.
But just to emphasize the bit, and I'm glad he's brought it up about character, who you are, how you're building yourself up, the positive character traits determine a lot about how you'll bounce back once you've fallen or once you've failed or had a loss, because then it's your character that helps you to stand. Yeah. But if you're busy taking bribes and, giving out bribes, dishing them out, when that East African anti-corruption something comes knocking, you don't have something to stand on. But imagine if you're a truthful person, someone with integrity, never stolen a shilling in public office, even as a young person who's just been employed, and you're like, you know what? I don't take bribes. I'll give you your passport. Clean heart. 20 years later, you'll stand somewhere and you'll be celebrated. Instead of being celebrated and in your heart, or you put up a whole mansion and we come for the housewarming party and we are like, oh, beautiful home. And it was stolen money. Yeah. Stop lying to us. Sure. Stop. I don't even know that we are still on that topic, but character, yes. Character is a great contributor to just nurturing resilience.
And a lack of character is a boundary, a hindrance. Absolutely. To not being able to be resilient. Mm-hmm. You both have spoken so many great nuggets. I wanted to touch on, you said that even in our parents' generation, before social media, they still had pressure. And we live in an African society where as young people, our parents' opinion matters a lot to us. And there are people who choose a particular university, choose a particular career path because of what their parents think, or because my uncle was an engineer and so I have to continue on that legacy. What advice or what would you say to young people who are maybe facing that kind of pressure? Maybe it's not social media pressure, but even just the pressure from their family and their society to go a particular direction for their parents' esteem or for their society or culture's esteem. Yeah.
Let Mark start, because I think I'm too radical. Let him start on a gentle note.
Back to the issue of identity.
Sure.
None of us was created a clone of somebody else. None of us was created to live the life that somebody else wants for us. My dad wanted me to be a lawyer. And he had his reasons. He pressured me to fill in law as, the form to apply for university. I knew law was the last thing I wanted to do. But that first year, I actually filled in law to please him.
Sure.
But I deliberately failed the exam because I didn't want to study law. I wanted to study design. I'm into creativity. I like working with colors and shapes and things like that. that's very far from law. You know, so so back to the issue of identity. A lot of young people don't know who they are, because who you are will determine the kind of choices you make, the kind of decisions you make in the course of life. Permit me to quote a couple of scriptures here. The Bible says that children obey your parents in the Lord. And a lot of young people use that as the reason why they have to do what their parents tell them to do.
Sure.
Now, because I work with young adults, not necessarily teenagers or children, adolescents, I work with young adults, people who are in their late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, and so on. And they quote the same scripture to me. And I say, well, first off, you're not a child. It says, children obey your parents in the Lord. So firstly, you are not a child. Once you are above the age of 18, you are no longer a child. And that verse was written for children.
Sure.
You will ever remain a child of your parents, yes, but once you reach the age of adulthood, 18, you are meant to reason on your, of course you can reason before them, but I'm talking about you are not under the control of your parents anymore. We're not speaking about being rebellious. We're not speaking about being disrespectful. We're not speaking about being dishonoring to your parents, but you are no longer a child. Secondly, it says obey your parents in the Lord. So what if your parents are asking you to do something that violates or goes against what the Lord wants you to do? Are you going to obey your parents? Certainly not. So children, not adults,
Keyword,
children,
yes.
obey your parents in the Lord, so far as what your parents are asking you to do is in line with the purpose of God for your life, obey them. But where there's a clash, choose your master.
I like how you make sure specifically there's that loophole, because parents and children will use that loophole in a way to get you to do what they want.
So you come to the radical.
Yes.
I agree with him. However, you see how
However,
there's the bit we need to understand also our African context and the African education system, especially for kids who end up being selected to go to public universities. I know there's the option to change, but I volunteer with an organization, Precious Sisters. We mentor young girls from very poor backgrounds. And one of the things we tell them, once you've done your fourth form exam and you've been selected to go to university, even if it's not your degree of choice, but because of the grade you've gotten, do that degree, because this girl is the gateway for her. And so there's some cases where look at your family background, look at where you're coming from, If you've been selected to go and do a bachelor's in education, and I know I'm saying this and I know there's a job crisis, but once you get that first degree, then it sets you above somebody who maybe dropped out of school. You can work your way around life with that. And so sometimes we just need to look at the context where we are coming from. What does this degree mean? Okay? And there's no education that is wasted. None whatsoever. So if you can go through the 4 years of education, get your initial degree, and then at 30, at 40, do your master's, we are not competing, we are not in a race. I mean, a race whereby, Mark has gotten his master's. Yeah.
You're racing against yourself.
Yes. Sure. So it's just relax. If he's doing architecture and I was called to do Bachelor of Arts in economics, he might get a job earlier than me. That's okay, But if my dream is to become a designer, then I could do my education degree, and then later on in life, when I now have the money, I can pursue that degree. And I also know that there are young people from very poor backgrounds. For them, this first degree means getting even a small job to begin helping their younger siblings.
Sure.
So unfortunately, we don't have choice, so to speak, And so one needs to exercise a lot of wisdom.
So as a young person, even when choosing a career path or choosing what they want to pursue after after Form 4 to look at the grander scheme of things, to look at their needs and look at their wants, to look at their family dynamics, and to look at 1 year from now, 5 years from now, what are the pros and cons, what are the benefits of me choosing this particular degree or choosing this particular career path, because what can be achieved for myself and for my family if need be. I've always said that a college degree doesn't guarantee you a job, it guarantees you options. And the more options we have as young people, just the wider our platform is to be able to do what we really would like to do. Even if we don't begin doing what we want to do, it just gives us a bigger platform and a place to go, a jumping point, basically.
And Zawadi, you've just said something, doing what we don't want to do gives you like a jumping point. You know, that's building resilience.
By the way,
It prepares you for the world.
sure.
Because you could be hired somewhere, you're hired somewhere for a certain position, and then you find out, but the title was brand manager. How come I'm being asked to wash the dishes?
Sure.
How come I'm being told to run errands in town?
Sure.
Yeah, if you,
Not what you want to do.
it's not what you want to do, but
where
you've
you
got
are.
to do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those are the things that also build character
Sure.
and then help us in terms of resilience.
Sure. Sure. I appreciate that. I also appreciate all of you for continuing to stay with us and listening. We apologize for the sound and technical issues that we had earlier, and we just thank you so much for continuing to be with us. Make sure you continue to send in your comments and questions that we will have time at the end to read aloud. Now we talk about skills. What do we need in order to be resilient? Because we may find ourselves in a place that we didn't want to be in, but it's where we are, like you said. And resilience is bouncing back from where we are. Where we are is not where we wanted to be. It's not where we planned to be. It's not where we hoped to be, but it's where we are. Look at 2020, and this year, a lot of people are thinking like, this is not where I wanted to be. But this is where I am. So what skills and quality, even as we talk about character and purpose and identity, would you advise young people to help them to be resilient? Because I also think resilience is not something that we wake up in the morning and we are go-getters, we are achievers, we are resilient, but it's a process through experiences and through knowledge from such people like yourselves. So what skills should we cultivate in order to be resilient?
I think that dealing with everyday challenges helps to build that when you face the bigger issues of life. Dealing with everyday challenges as you go along, being involved in the detail of problem solving every day. A lot of young people, we're born into an instant generation where we want things done quickly, all right? And then also the whole fact that people don't understand the value of delayed gratification. But when you become immersed in the details of solving everyday problems, being somebody that finds solution to things that you face and are challenged with every day, helps you to face the big challenges when they come. Secondly, be a big picture person. So I've talked about the details of everyday life, but also looking at the big picture of life. Why is this happening now? And you're not asking those questions in order to find sympathetic answers, but to find solutions. And you don't need to have solutions for every issue that you face in life, but seeing the bigger picture, living in a context where you can define why this is happening. Maybe not in clear details, but you can at least pinpoint reasons why this is happening, helps you to make decisions to be resilient.
Getting to the root of the matter.
Getting to the root of the matter, maybe not even to the root in terms of, I have issues that are happening in my life that I don't have all the answers to, but I keep the big picture in view. I tell myself, okay, this has to happen. Certain things I can't change, but I embrace this challenge with a mentality, with a positive outlook to it that I will walk through this. I think that many of us don't prepare ourselves for life. We don't prepare ourselves. Of course, we should have other people who should input in our lives to prepare us for the situations that we will face, but there's also a personal responsibility I should take. All right. If I purpose in myself that come what may, I'm going to rise above these obstacles, you see, that decision already sets me up for success. But when I'm just living my life anyhow, whatever will happen, that is not the best attitude to wade through situations that will require resilience. I have to make decisions even before circumstances hit me. I'm going to walk through this and I'm going to emerge on the other side of this a better person and stronger and more resilient, because I will face bigger situations in future that are bigger than what I'm dealing with right now. So I think it's a process of dealing with everyday situations, but at the same time keeping the big picture in view, and then centering on the fact that I have it in me to overcome this.
So instead of crumbling because of a challenge, but rather we should critically think
Yes.
through challenges, think of a plan B, plan C, just in case.
You must have, yes, you must have contingency plans. I mean, sure. I'm dealing with our team, planning for 2021. We've laid out all the plans. And then I told each person, create a column to think about what will happen if 2021 ends up worse than 2020 in terms of lockdowns, pandemics, and all that. Everything we've designed can change overnight. If you don't have a contingency plan, then you won't be able to build the kind of resilience required to deal with a future that you have not designed, and you don't necessarily have all the answers to what will happen to you. Yeah.
Very nice.
I think to build on his points, it's important to cultivate genuine friendships, genuine relationships. One, with your peers, people you can talk to and talk to genuinely. I think most times, and even in my work, I found that people who crumble never took time, or they have relationships, but they'll tell you, oh, but I can't tell my friends this. And you're wondering, so why are they your friends? Then those are acquaintances,
Sure.
Or classmates.
Sure.
But it's really important to have genuine friendships in terms of peers, and then genuine relationships in terms of mentors. Yeah. Have mentors, older people that you can go to and say, look, this is what I'd planned, but this is what has happened. I'm really struggling. And you see what genuine relationships do for you, whether it's with the older or your peers, is to help you become vulnerable. And vulnerability means people are now able to help you.
Sure.
Yeah? Because if you put up a strong front, Zawadi, I won't just assume that you have problems. I won't come and say, oh, I notice you're crumbling. You've put all this layer of makeup, nice wig and whatnot, you're looking all flashy. I'll just assume, oh, this girl is doing well. Sure. Yeah. So building those relationships is quite important. And something, Zawadi, you'd rather have one genuine friend than 10,000 fake friends. That friend will walk with you, support you. And when I talk about genuine friendships, these are people who will tell you the truth. They'll tell you, what you're doing is wrong. Yeah? Or what you're doing is the right thing. And I'm here to walk with you and support you. And in addition to just genuine friendships, maybe he touched on it a bit, we need to come out of the me, I, myself space. It's not just about you. Yeah? And so I encourage young people, get out into the community and serve. Have you ever been sick and gone to hospital and seen someone more sick than you and you're thinking, I was complaining.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not sick.
Yeah.
Yeah? Or you sit with someone and you hear their life story and you're thinking, and I've dared to complain and murmur and grumble. So the moment we come out of ourselves, then we become better people.
And we put things into perspective. Yes. And having true, genuine friends can be a sounding board to put things into perspective, to stop us before we go to a point of no return, to give us advice or insight even as we fail. I think our generation, we're very, do you, boo, like if that's what your choice, if that's what you want to do, go ahead. It's not my business. But sometimes we should make it our business if we're genuinely there to help. Well, the conversation is fantastic. I have some comments from our audience members. Please keep them coming. Brian has asked Auntie Lucy, or has said, character is a great contribution to being resilient, and lack of good moral character is a hindrance to building resilience. I completely agree. You know, they say that negative news spreads faster than positive, which is so sad, actually, that to be honest, watching the news is a very saddening portion of my day, honestly, because it's nothing but just bad things and negative things and corruption and scandals and whatnot. So I definitely agree that we should dare to be different and to be resilient and to have good moral character. Thank you, Brian. Laureen Thuol said, no one should ever make you feel like you're not there yet. I saw there's a YouTuber I like watching, and she said that 2021, I want to be seen trying. Because we want to be seen after it's already been done. But that part of being vulnerable is also just to be seen trying. Like, this is the effort I'm making, because that's the process of getting to where we want to be. And so I appreciate that. Joyce says, very true. It's a personal race. Yob's Mr. Right. Yes, we are a microwave generation for sure. I think getting that instant meal, that instant gratification has now taught us, or has trained us not to know what to do when things linger. Like, what do we do when things take longer than what we expected? What do we do when a global pandemic happens and everything is shut down and we had a deadline of March to get something done? Yeah, those are all very, very important things that happen. I appreciate that.
Something you've read about just the microwave generation and not waiting. I think waiting is an aspect of cultivating resilience. Yeah, the ability to wait also then nurtures in you that quality just to be resilient. Yeah, so of course, as young adults, I tell you, the media will kill us. The media will kill us because you see, you know, Samantha's bridal show, I don't know, wedding what. And so I sit with a 22-year-old, and the 22-year-old is telling me, in this time and generation, if it was in 1945, then would say, okay, something is wrong. And she's clearly stressed out about not having met Mr. Right. 22.
Imagine.
22, you should be thinking of camping and hanging out and dancing and, just being 22.
Yeah.
And you know what happens? Because you're not ready to wait, then you make mistakes that that are costly.
We have a question from an audience. Is this the reality of it all? For one to really succeed in Kenya, how easy is it to live without bribes?
I've never given a bribe.
Really?
Yeah, never. Never. It must be a choice you make. Yes. If they ask for a bribe, you walk away.
Yes. I can tell you stories, but this will take all day.
So for these people who don't give bribes, people who want to live with a moral character, somebody asks, what do you do when you feel like you don't fit in?
First of all, if you really want to become who you are supposed to be, not who everybody expects you to be, you are not supposed to fit in. People who change the world never sought to fit in anywhere. People who changed the world, they were non-conformists. They weren't trying to be part of the system. People who changed the world, they stood out, they made their values known, they communicated their convictions, and the world follows such people. They are few, but that's who we're called to be. Every young person has the potential to change the world if they refuse to conform. So forget about fitting in. Stick with your values and make your principles and convictions known. The world will come after you. But so long as we're playing ball, we're wanting to do what everybody else is, it's a lot easier to give a bribe and have your way than to stick with your convictions. But further down the line, you have nothing to share with the world because you've just become like everybody else.
Zawadi, if I gave a bribe for Olive International to be registered, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't even be proud of Olive International because I know at the back of my mind, I'm not genuine. If we are promoting positive youth development, honestly, then there are certain values we must pursue.
And if you want to be remembered as someone who had that moral character, who had an identity, who knew who they were, then we will not fit in. That's just a fact.
Sometimes I travel with the young people I'm discipling, and I get stopped by the police. And you've obviously not committed any crime or done anything that is wrong, but in order for you not to be delayed, they want to insist that you give a bribe or something. Now, if I give a bribe and we're late for a meeting, if I give a bribe, what am I going to tell that young person that I'm mentoring? Exactly, they are watching. So I've actually there are times when I've refused to give a bribe. I'd rather go to the police station and have you waste 2 hours of my time. I would rather that, because to prove a point, not just to the police, to this young person, but also to myself, that I'm cultivating a character here that is unpurchasable. People say everybody has a price. I don't entirely agree with that statement, because you have to just decide, what kind of life do you want to build? Who are you really? And then you now make costly decisions in order to get you there. But it's a lot easier to just buckle down and just be like everybody else. You won't leave any lasting mark on civilization. So.
Wow. We have some more questions coming in. Someone is asking what about affirmations? Can affirming yourself build resilience, saying things like, I am strong, I am beautiful? Are those useful in building and cultivating resilience within ourselves, affirming ourselves?
I'll let the psychologist handle this.
Zawadi, I think we also need to be real.
Okay.
Affirmations are good, but just to a certain extent. Now, there's self-affirmations and affirmations from other people. Actually, the criticism now is that, and parents, if you're a parent, forgive me. Oh, Mark, you're a parent, you know? Your little girl, oh princess. You're even worshipping the ground upon which she walks. You're affirming her, but I think it's wrong affirmation. Yeah, you're not preparing her for the real world. She'll not be princess. Let me tell you, you can stand in front of the mirror and say, I am beautiful, I am strong, I am what? And you walk into that office, and the boss is waiting. The boss was not with you in that room as you're saying, I am beautiful. And I'm not saying affirmations are wrong, but then in addition to affirming yourself, what is your identity? What is your purpose? What is your character? Who are you as a person? Because you could be affirming a false person. You could be affirming a false identity. Yeah.
Or the affirmations could be like makeup, it's cosmetic. You are speaking things that have not first been ingrained deep inside you. Identity is not something you receive. Identity is something you believe. And if you don't believe it, identity is not something you receive externally. Identity is something you believe internally. So who are you really? If you know who you are, you really don't look for anybody to affirm you. You don't crave for people to say things to you that will make your day. No. When people say, oh, you've made my day, I say, no, you should make your day. Don't wait for somebody else to make your day. If you know who you are, live from the core. Build your life on things that are unshakable, things that are the fixed foundations upon which times and seasons and changing situations around you, they can't shake those foundations. But many of us are building our lives on, what do they think of me? Do they like me? No, if you know who you are, you don't need anybody to make your day. You make your day. And it's not even in the things you say to yourself. It's just in who you believe yourself to be. Yeah, so...
Isabella has agreed with you. She says, not conforming, but just being you. Powerful. I definitely agree. We have another question here about the topic of friendships. And somebody's asking, you talked about building friendship, but how do you recover when your friends hurt you or disappoint you? How do you come back from such disappointment and heartbreak from friends?
You mourn the loss of those friendships and then rise up and make new friends. Life has to go on, Zawadi. Okay, I'm making it very simplistic, but mourn, cry, scream. But you see, maybe the season for those friendships were over. And some of us are hanging on to friendships that are not healthy. Yeah? Maybe just friendships that are feeding aspects of us or even misleading us. But because we want to be identified with those friends, we stick to them. And you keep on, some of your true friends tell you, no, don't hang out with that guy or that girl. But you keep on thinking, no, no, until something happens. So go through the grieving process. Yeah, there are stages of grief when you've lost a friendship. And then after that, you'll be alone and lonely for some time, but one or two people will come into your life.
And then make up your mind, prepare yourself for pain. I tell people, if you don't want to ever be disappointed, hurt, and let down by people, relocate. Move to Venus or Mars or Jupiter. But on this planet, you will face pain. Make up your mind ahead of time that I will be disappointed by people, and this is how I will try my best to react. But you won't become a recluse, and isolate yourself from people. That's not how to deal with pain when you are disappointed with friendships. Like she said, well, I don't want to say suck it up, but I mean, just walk through the whole process, bear the pain, and rise up and keep going. There are lots of good people out there. Scripture says that he who must have friends must himself be friendly.
Sure.
All right. So anyway.
And if your friends have disappointed you, then try also to make up. Because there's no relationship that we can say is unmendable. Try your best. If it totally fails, then move on to something else. Because some disappointments may actually be genuine. Maybe someone did something innocently, or even if it was on purpose, but try and rebuild that friendship, that relationship.
I was talking with some young people this year in our peer mentoring classes, and we were saying how the definition of friendship has changed this year because they realized that if they're not in class with each other, because this year a lot of people are online, if they're not out in the neighborhood, if they're not out at parties or whatnot, those people no longer reach out to them anymore. And so we were talking about how we get disappointed because we have expectations and we don't even define the people who are in our lives. So for me, my definition of a friend is someone who the two of us willingly interact with each other outside of a forced environment. Because now that we're online, we're not in class with somebody anymore. We're not in the community with people anymore. We're not out and about with people anymore. But do those people make an effort to communicate with me? And if they don't, were they really my friends? So I think we can be disappointed at our friendships, or we can be disappointed in our false definition of what somebody was. And we thought they were a friend. But particularly this year, when we don't see each other anymore, then we realize they're not really our friends. And it can be something to reevaluate even in 2021 to now define that was an acquaintance, that was a classmate, that was a colleague. They were not my friend. And that's hard, but it's necessary.
Though, again, a challenge, I think young people should also just reach out and make friendships.
Yes.
Yeah. I find it weird that someone has not, personally, you've not spoken to me in 6 months, then you write me a message and say, hi, umenitupa. Umenitupa means you've thrown me. How have I thrown you? Yeah. And for 6 months, you've also sat back.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, when people write me such messages, I know they want something. They're just getting ready to ask for something. But you get what I'm saying, yeah? Even the young people have got a responsibility to nurture friendships. You can't sit back and say, my friend hasn't reached out to me, my classmate. You try. If if it's not reciprocated, then you know that wasn't a genuine friendship.
And I think before you can nurture a friendship, you should also initiate friendships. Friendships don't just happen. You can initiate friendships. You can actually, and if you initiate a friendship, then be willing to invest in that friendship. A lot of people wait. A lot of us wait for people to reach out to us and pour into us, but we fail to also realize that we have a lot to offer We have a lot to give. And if we just, intentionally initiate friendships and then pour into that friendship, you can't reap where you have not sown. It's only a thief that goes to take where they have not planted something. So initiate friendships, nurture them, and enjoy the process. If it fails, pick yourself back up, be resilient, initiate new friendships.
And invest. I like that. Initiate, because I think we like starting, but then we don't want to continue it, and that takes investment. Brian has agreed with you, Mr. Kolo. We all have the potential to transform the world if we refuse to conform and be the person we are each meant to be. So that has resonated with Brian. There's another question here about, I heard the discussion about follow your heart. Would you say it's advisable to fully follow your heart?
It depends on what's in your heart. If you have a heart that is not, okay, again, permit me to speak from a spiritual perspective. Okay, if you follow a heart that is not fully set on God, I'm not sure you will end up in the right destination. Let me give a quick example. A lot of us quote this passage of the Bible that says, God will give you the desires of your heart. And it's true. It's actually in the Bible, Psalm 37 verse 4. God will give you the desires of your heart. But it's conditional. Just before that, it says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So what if the desires of your heart are harmful to you? Will God give you those desires? Then that will not be proper of him. So follow the desires of your heart. Follow your heart if your heart is in the right place, if your heart is filled with the right things, if your heart is set on the right course, and the right course is never a selfish course. If your heart is always set on pleasing yourself, having your way, doing things how you want it, then such a heart will lead you astray. But if your heart is set on pleasing God, serving people, bringing joy into other people's lives, and even when you are pursuing a career, a profession, something that is lofty and good, does it have built in there adding value to the world? If it doesn't, if it's just all about you, then that selfish heart is bound to destroy whoever is carrying it. So
our heart is naturally deceitful, actually. Yeah, who alone can know its ways? Yes.
And that expression, follow your heart, is especially when we're in love, right?
Yes.
Follow your heart. He's tall, dark, and handsome. My heart tells me follow him. My friend, you'll follow him into that pond of water there.
Cliff.
Yeah? So you still need to be sober, even in terms of career choice. Yes, your heart is telling you this is what I want to do. But sit back and ask yourself, if I'm going to be employed by this company that promotes what? Promotes child labor. Is this something that I really want to do? Is this, your heart might tell you, after all, you need money, good life, whatnot, but we don't just follow your heart. Think about it soberly, ask questions about your decision, the decision you're about to make, and then, make the right choice.
And then let me add to that. As you follow your heart, seek counsel.
Sure.
Godly counsel. Sure. Scripture says that in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Whether it's marriage, courtship, career, finances, children. In the multitude of counselors, there is safety.
So that we're not just going at it on our own, but we have accountability as we're following our heart.
I like that you brought in the issue of seeking counsel, because I think the older generation, there were many aunties and uncles.
Yes.
There was that support system, sense of community, where even in making decisions, it may look like they were overbearing, but really they were giving counsel. They were giving advice that made somebody go back and think through, Like, yes, I've lost my job, but your uncle calls you and says, hey, let's talk about this. You're now, don't give up, don't what. But, we've isolated ourselves and we're really pursuing individualized lives.
Yes.
to our detriment.
It is, actually, it is. An individualized society is not helping us long term at all. Eric Musangi has commented and said, I think it's important to understand who you are and be able to love yourself enough to give yourself a chance to be able to stand by yourself and not be blown by every wind that comes in your life. I definitely agree. And loving yourself does not mean being egotistical or selfish. It simply means being able to put the right people in your life on a solid foundation, because it's not a solo mission. So just exactly what we had said. Wow, today we have spoken so much about resilience, and I think as we close in our final thoughts, if you got nothing out of today, nothing, what would you say are the benefits and why young people, why anyone should be resilient? What are the benefits of being resilient?
First off, because you have a purpose to fulfill, and you don't want to have an aborted journey. You have a purpose to fulfill, and you have a lot to contribute. When you fail to be resilient, when you give up on life, you give up on your dreams, give up on your goals, you are not the only one affected. Many other people are also affected negatively. So think about, first, you have a purpose to fulfill, and it's a very precious purpose. It wasn't designed by you. It's bigger than you. It goes way beyond your lifetime. Secondly, think about many other people that can easily, whose destinies could also be altered, affected negatively in one way or the other by your choosing not to pick up. And I use a biblical story. Joseph. Think of all the obstacles in Joseph's life. If he had chosen to just, stick it out in the pit, or just slave it away in Potiphar's house, or just be a nice boy in the prison, that's it. And a whole nation, a whole nation was waiting for Joseph to not give up at every obstacle, to bounce back. And again, I think of somebody like Esther, so with all the minuses, all the negatives against them, they chose to be resilient and to press on, and ultimately their decisions affected nations.
If they just bounce back, I like that. Why should we be resilient?
He's given such a deep answer, I don't
Right?
know what to say. Why should we be resilient? You remember the story of the cake, the analogy?
Yes.
Because in the end, you'll have the cake and eat it.
Sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
So don't give up. Don't give up, even when you're in the heat, 250 degrees, if you're in the mud pit, there's so much. And, for young people, I say this with a lot of feeling in my heart. Every young person has got something special to offer. You may not be known worldwide. You may not have the number of followers, 15 million or whatever followers, but just what you can contribute in the space that God has created for you, that makes a big difference. So never give up. Yeah? It may be difficult. It may be really, really hard. You may struggle even getting a job 4 years, 5 years. But in the midst of that struggle, there's something beautiful that is being prepared for you, and you're becoming a more beautiful person. So just don't give up. There's so much in you and so much of you to offer, just like what it said.
I'd like to thank Auntie Lucy and thank Mr. Mark Kolo for your insight. I'd like to thank you even just for encouraging young people. If there's anything we've learned this year, is that there's nothing predictable, there's nothing that's guaranteed to us, that there's always going to be shifts and challenges, but there's so much more that we have to live for. There's so much more left to do. And so how we bounce back matters what will happen in our future. I'd like to thank you all for being part of today's live. Please make sure that you like, share, subscribe. For Olive International on YouTube, this video will be on other platforms for your consumption at a later date. And please continue to give your comments and feedbacks. We would love to continue doing this in 2021. Give us different topics. What challenges are you all facing, so that we can invite such wonderful panelists like these ones to share and to discuss. So again, we thank you. I am your host, Zawadi, and be resilient. Bounce back.